Welcome to Rocky's Reading Room. I'm going to be reading the fourth book of my With Love from Above series, and it's titled Her Love from Above. This is a comedy romance series, and each of the books deals with a specific topic. This one, Her Love from Above, deals with narcissism. So by the time we get to the end of the book, you will have a much better understanding of what narcissism is through the characters that are in the book. Now, I'll be reading 20 or 30-minute sessions and reposting on a regular basis, so you can go from chapter 1 all the way to the end of the book. Or if you get anxious to hear the ending of it, it is also available on Amazon, both in Kindle and in a hardback edition. Chapter 1, Remembering Auntie Bobbie Jo. A cool mountain breeze skimmed across Claire's face as she leaned against the Jeep's headrest. When she moved her weary eyes, the scent of fresh pine and mountain fragrances filled her being. She needed a break from the laboratory, but Auntie's funeral was not what she had in mind. She thought back to the first time she met Charlie's favorite relative, Aunt Bobbie Jo. It had been their wedding weekend, and Bobbie Jo, with her curly white-blue hair, plump round face, and delightful smile, was such a joyful soul that she stole Claire's heart. That kindred feeling had only increased over time. Every time Claire saw Auntie, and she preferred being called Auntie, something memorable and funny happened. Auntie had charm, she had charisma, and she was as mischievous as the day is long. Claire's smile widened as she recalled her introduction to Auntie. As usual, Charlie, accustomed to arriving early to help his father's cousin prepare the lodge for family gatherings, grabbed an armful of firewood and trailed Claire through the lodge door. Upon entering the large log building, appropriately named Haven's Rest, they were startled to see an older woman swinging from the chandelier. Literally, Auntie was swinging from the large chandelier in the middle of the spacious meeting area. A 22-foot aluminum ladder lay on the floor beneath her. "Auntie," Charlie cried, dropping an armful of firewood over the boards and rushing to her aid. "Hang on, I'm coming." To Claire's surprise, the older lady appeared calm as she peered down at them, a humorous grin resting on her lovely face. "I'm fine," Auntie laughed. "I knew you'd be here soon. You're always early to help." "Fine?" Charlie retorted. "You're hanging from a chandelier. How is that fine?" "Not hanging from," she corrected, "swinging on." She watched as Charlie picked up the ladder and positioned it beneath her. "See?" Auntie grabbed a golden arm of the chandelier and twisted her body toward them. "I always attach this harness around myself when I clean this thing, just in case this happens. Never has before, but," she giggled, "I guess there's always a first." "You've done this before?" It was an understatement to say Charlie was not happy with that knowledge. "Once a year, to be exact," she answered, "every fall." Auntie's white-blue hair glistened from the sunlight entering a nearby skylight, and she seemed to not have a care in the world. "Good grief, Auntie!" Charlie exclaimed. Her lack of concern was mind-blowing. "You're nearly 80 years old. You've got enough money to pay someone to clean this." "Psst," she objected. "Why would I waste good money on something I can do myself?" Charlie's anger rose as he climbed the ladder. "Buck's here," he said. "Get him to clean it." "He's busy," she responded. "Besides, I didn't want to bother him." "Auntie," he protested, "you're not a spring chicken, no matter how spry you feel. This needs to be your wake-up call." "What can I do?" Claire asked. She was terrified for Charlie and his aunt, although she tried to keep that terror from sounding in her voice. Just hold the ladder, Charlie said. This thing wasn't meant for two, not when they're standing this high up the rungs. Charlie eased Auntie onto the ladder, carefully unhitched the harness, and then supported her as they slowly descended to the wooden floor. Auntie, he said when he stepped off the ladder, you obviously can't do it alone anymore, or I wouldn't have needed to rescue you. He assisted her until she was standing beside him. Please, get Buck to do this. He'll be irate when he learns you're doing this yourself, especially when he hears what happened. Don't you dare tell him, Auntie threatened. I'll never hear the end of it. Charlie stood, arms akimbo. I won't tell Buck if you promise never to do this again. Find someone else to clean this thing. Auntie gave a slight sigh. You're probably right. I guess it's just hard admitting you're getting old. Well, you're only as old as you feel, Claire quipped while trying to lighten the atmosphere. Charlie glanced at his fiancée sternly. His aunt was as obstinate as anyone he knew about doing things herself, and the last thing she needed right now was Claire's encouragement. Claire, in turn, instantly regretted her words. She didn't know Aunt Bobbie Jo then, but she did recognize that an older woman who would climb a ladder and hitch herself to a chandelier hardly needed certain types of inspiration. She paused, trying to decide how to amend her comment. I didn't mean that it's okay to... Without finishing her statement, she motioned toward the ladder and chandelier. Aunt Bobbie Jo examined her more closely, then smiled. Claire remembered that smile well. And you, my dear, his aunt said, must be some catch to have caught my little Charlie. I was beginning to wonder if he would ever meet his equal. Claire grinned. It's nice to meet. Oh, come here, the older lady begged. She grabbed Claire's arm and pulled her into a firm embrace. I am so glad to meet you. I thought I would be in my grave before he found a woman. Claire remembered that embrace, too. Auntie, all 5'1" of her, squeezed her like a bodybuilder. She recalled wondering who would win if they were forced into a wrestling match. Without a doubt, her money would have been placed on his aunt. A tear stole down her cheek as she thought now of that squeezing hug. She was such a delight, she softly uttered. What? Charlie asked. When Claire didn't answer, he glanced over to see her wipe a tear from her cheek. He knew how she felt. His aunt was with Jesus, but the pain of her loss still pierced his heart. He would miss her dearly. A precious part of his life was gone. Family gatherings, most of which were held at Haven's Rest, would never be the same. Charlie slowed the Jeep to a stop as he topped the final hill. The view was breathtaking. No matter how often or in which season he visited Haven's Rest, this view always stole his breath. Currently, the weather was cooling, as the calendar was well into fall. Most of the aspen leaves were a bright yellow, but still held firm to their branches. These large trees and green-filled, fiery red underbrush and enormous boulder background crowned the sizable wooden structure resting in their midst. Aunt Bobbie Jo had built the Haven's Rest Lodge in the perfect location. It was the centerpiece of the view and the centerpiece of her ministry. In the distance, as though looking down upon this centerpiece, were the rooftops of a collection of smaller cabins. These cabins, which carried the atmosphere of Hallmark Christmas specials, were safe havens for abused individuals attempting to remake their lives. Claire, Charlie said, you okay? Claire smiled as she squeezed her husband's hand. I was just remembering Auntie. I've not known anyone like her before. and I so wish I could have known her longer. She was special, Charlie agreed. She was such a feisty lady. When I was growing up, I used to swear she had spidey senses. He glanced at Claire. Either that or a third all-knowing eye that I never saw. Claire's expression instantly morphed from sadness to curiosity. What are you talking about? Charlie smiled. She caught me in all kinds of mischief. Once, when I was 13 years old, Buck came home from college talking about some students who were skipping class because the professor was sick and the sub was horrible. By the end of the week, he and 2 other ladies were the only ones in attendance. Then he mentioned his high school senior skip day. I thought the world of Buck, so I wanted to have a skip day, too. Claire cackled. I can't imagine you doing anything like that. Me? Yes, but you? No. Charlie's smile grew as he continued. I planned my skip day perfectly, down to the nth detail. I waited until Mom and Dad were leaving town on business. I was to hop the bus for school that morning and get off at Haven's Rest in the afternoon. We only lived a mile from the mission, so I knew when to start walking so that I arrived at the lodge exactly when the bus would. I knew the school would call my parents about my absence, but I also knew they wouldn't be home to answer that call. What I wasn't expecting was for the school to call Auntie. He shook his head. I didn't know about emergency contact lists. Claire chuckled. Auntie knew about my secret hideout in the woods behind our home, he continued. You can imagine how surprised I was to see her stomping through the woods, coming toward me. Fun, fun, Claire giggled. Yep, and she was wearing house shoes and an old-fashioned nightgown. Claire giggled even louder. She even had mascara smeared beneath one eye. Huh, I never saw Auntie wear makeup. Neither had I, Charlie admitted. But that wasn't the worst of it. Her entire head was covered with those squishy pink curlers. It was hideous. I wasn't much of a fashionista, but even I knew that bright red hair clashed with pink curlers. Not to mention it looked ridiculous. Claire's eyes moistened from tears of laughter. And I mean a head full of them, Charlie repeated. Some were tight against her scalp, while others were hanging down like they'd loosened during the night. I'd stayed at Haven's Rest many times before that day, and I had never seen Auntie wearing curlers. He paused to let Claire's laughter lessen so she could hear, and then continued. It was seriously disconcerting. Anyway, she grabbed my arm and chewed me out the entire way to her vehicle. Then, and this is the most horrible part of it all, she proceeded to drive me to school. He looked at Claire for emphasis, then added, looking like that. When Claire choked from laughter and spat unwittingly on the Jeep's dash, Charlie grabbed a handkerchief from his pocket and handed it to her. As she cleaned the dash, he continued, I was horrified, not because I was caught or being chewed out, but because she was planning to walk into the high school looking like that. He shook his head in wonder. I was a freshman. I would never have lived that down. The skipper dragged to school by his aunt, who looked like a cross between the grandmother on the Waltons and a Martian. Mercy, Claire breathed out when she was finally able to speak. I'd have paid to see that. What did your parents do? Nothing, Charlie said. They never found out. Auntie said if I came over and mucked out the stalls and spread manure on the garden for the following 4 Saturdays, she wouldn't tell them. When I asked Mom and Dad if I could help Auntie, they said no. That puzzled me. They never said no when I asked to help someone. So They never found out, Claire squeaked out between bouts of laughter. Charlie laughed too, partially because of the story's humor, but primarily because of Claire's response. Oh, they found out all right, he continued. Years later, I discovered the truth of the story. Auntie told my parents everything before they even got home. They had a blast pretending not to know what I'd done. When I asked to work for 4 Saturdays at Auntie's, I was surprised they didn't immediately say yes, but that day I had to beg to muck out the stalls. He looked at Claire with humor in his eyes. Do you know how humiliating it is to beg to play with manure? Now that's ingenious. Claire shook her head as she wiped tears of laughter from her cheeks. I bet you never skipped again. Charlie smiled. I'm not finished yet. Oh? Claire's eyebrows raised. Okay, big boy. I'm Paul Harvey right now, or in my case, Pauline Harvey. What's the rest of the story? Charlie tried to refrain from smiling too much as he continued. I had never seen Auntie not dressed by 7 a.m., so when she came traipsing through those woods wearing that getup 2 hours later than that, I was more than a bit surprised. That just wasn't her. Years later, at a Christmas gathering, my family had quite a laugh when Auntie told the real story. That's when I learned that beneath her great-granny gown, Auntie was fully dressed. Oh no, Claire snorted. And I had never seen her in curlers because she didn't use them, Charlie informed. She borrowed those hideous pink things from one of the residents of Haven's Rest. I guess Auntie and 2 of the ladies had a ball getting her all dolled up for me. One did her hair while the other smeared mascara beneath her eyes and dug up that old gown for her to wear. She put on the entire outfit just for you? Man, I wish I'd known her better. That was brilliant. Instead of grounding me, or whatever my dad would have done that may or may not have left a lasting impression, Auntie's little charade terrified me. You're right, I never skipped class again. Not even in college? Nope, Charlie answered. Not even in college. Once again, Claire wiped a few tears from her face. I've taught a few college students who would have benefited from an auntie in their lives, she said. They both turned their attention to the scenery before them. She was a wise woman, Claire said, one of a kind. I hope Haven's Rest doesn't suffer too much from her loss. Me too, Charlie agreed as he began easing the Jeep forward. Auntie spent too many years building this ministry to let it falter now. There should be— Just a minute, Claire blurted, interrupting Charlie's statement. I want a picture. Her words faded as she jumped from the slowly moving vehicle. Claire, Charlie cried. He stopped the Jeep as quickly as possible, opened the door, and climbed out. We've talked about this, he fussed. You can't jump from moving vehicles. You'll end up fracturing another bone. The freshness of the cool mountain breeze greeted him as he continued. You've got to give me a heads up before leaping out like that. I'm sorry, she said. I wasn't thinking. She snapped a picture of Haven's Rest, nestled snugly into the valley. This is a blessed land, she breathed out softly. Look, Charlie exclaimed, pointing toward the tree line west of the Haven's Rest lodge. Elk, do you see that? They're coming out to eat. Claire zoomed her camera in on the elk and snapped some pictures. It's a whole herd of them, she said. How cool. Charlie grinned. Yes, Claire, he agreed, thinking of her previous statement. This is a blessed land. Arden, the mighty Polynesian angelic warrior, lowered himself to Charlie's Jeep. As of late, he rarely participated in angelic warfare, yet his arsenal of weapons would indicate otherwise. A glimmering silver sword hung from in a black sheath on the right side of his belt, while 2 daggers, both over a foot long, were housed on the opposite side. His bow and arrows and a spiked club could be pulled from the ether at a moment's notice. His garment fit snugly to his huge frame and was comprised of various grays, blacks, and dark blues. His overall appearance, if not for his enormous size, would enable him to mesh easily into a crowd of modern Goths. With his black hair and dark skin added to the mix, he was frightening to behold. Although Arden's Gothic appearance matched his ruthless fighting abilities, his personality did not. Like his charge, Charlie O'Dare, he had a quiet strength and calming spirit. He had been Charlie's guardian angel for several years, but since Charlie's marriage to Claire, Arden often found himself caring for them both. Before her arrival, Arden's life was generally mundane, which was much to his liking. Yet now, with her mischievous nature and accident-prone magnetism, it was anything but ordinary. "Where are you, my friend?" he voiced while thinking of Teasel. He shook his head in frustration. Teasel, Claire's guardian for over 2 decades, was currently away on assignment. He would soon be returning, but until then, Arden was left monitoring her alone. He could only hope she would not cause significant trouble or injure herself with some unexpected antic before his friend's return. Had he been expecting her to jump from the moving jeep, he would have been beside the vehicle instead of above it. Thankfully, she was not injured herself. He scanned the valley while hovering a few feet above his charge. It was stunningly beautiful, more so than he remembered. The fall colors of the aspen trees, fiery underbrush, large blue spruces, uniquely designed boulders, and green carpet of lush grass surrounding Haven's Rest gave the appearance of a hallowed land. Charlie and Claire were correct. This was indeed a blessed land, but that wasn't just because of its beauty. It was blessed because Auntie prayed that God's blessings and protection would envelope her property and all who dwelt on it. With her passing into the everlasting arms of her Savior, the continuing fulfillment of those many prayers were now in jeopardy. Arden scanned the immediate vicinity for additional angelic warriors, but saw none. Because the essence of God had shielded this area for decades, a strong angelic presence had not previously been necessary, except on rare occasions. Yet now, upon Bobbie Joe's passing, that shield was in danger of fading. Arden's current assignment was to assist Nahath, the chief guardian of Haven's Rest, in ensuring that the ministry remained a blessing and haven for those in need.